From there we can move on to our nutrition, and here's a good time to introduce this. So what we have here is a book called Nutrition. This has been coming for a while now. I was doing sessions with a guy who was in TY, and there, obviously in TY you have to create a business plan and a product or service for TY, and what they came up with then was this. So Nutrition is a book that's filled with recipes of healthy meals that you can cook, and it's aimed towards, we'll say, young athletes who struggle with figuring out what kind of foods they can eat, what they should eat. And obviously I've had my input into this. The picture is pretty old, but it's still relevant. So what I did with them is I sent them the information regarding nutrition, so carbs, fats, protein, vitamins, minerals, why they're important, what are they, quick snippets of information where if you read it you'd have a decent idea of what you should be looking at. But it is a fantastic book. Nutrition, I will leave the link to their social medias down below. Really enjoyed helping them out with this, and it turned out really well. So super proud of them for that. So well done, guys. But then that moves me in then obviously to nutrition. Now when it comes to nutrition, there is relatively little difference between the principles that kids and adults apply to. If you want to gain weight, you need to be in a calorie surplus. If you want to lose weight or fat, you need to be in a calorie deficit. The problem arises when you are talking about putting a kid in a calorie deficit, which is wrong. Unless they're on the obese side of things, when medically then you have to. But I'm talking now kids who are involved in sport, and the term energy availability is the most important one. So you need to have enough energy to fuel the basic processes of the body to grow, but you also need to provide enough fuel on top of that then to fuel the extra activity that you do with your sport. Again, huge, I could go into this for a long time, but again, that's one of the basic principles that you need to adhere to. When it comes to nutrition for kids, there's 5 key stages, and anybody involved in soccer will know they'll be fairly similar to the ones that the FEI teach you in the early coaching courses. So you've got your fundamentals, learning to train, training to train is 2, no, fundamentals 1, learning to train, training to train, training to compete, and training to win. And then your 5 stages of nutrition then are your eating to develop. So as a child in the first year to 3 years, eating to develop and then grow healthy. In the first, you're talking maybe up to 8 years. So again, you need to eat enough where you can grow healthy, strong bones, muscles, and not be deprived of food. Stage 2 then is learning to eat. So learning to eat as many different foods as you possibly can. Vegetables, fruits, meat, dairy, carbohydrate sources, as many different ones as you can. And again, not narrowing your pool of foods that you can choose from when you get older, because obviously the wider range of foods that you can choose from, the better equipped you're going to be to fuel your sport or your activity that you're going to do. Stage 3 is your eating to grow. So then this might come in and around your 14 to 16 age range, where now you are in that kind of post-puberty area where now you can benefit from kind of being in a calorie surplus with training, and kind of enter a hypertrophy phase where you can start to build lean muscle mass and actually start to grow. Stage 4 then is eating to compete. So now you're getting into that kind of like 16 to 21 range of ages. Again, it varies depending on what sport you're in, but the whole idea now is that you're getting into a little bit more advanced techniques, like meal timing and frequency and stuff like that, which unless you have the first 3 stages done successfully, then you're kind of missing the forest for the trees in this area. And the last one is obviously eating to win, so that's where your meal timing comes in. So eating with enough time before a game to adequately fuel that exercise, so that you're going to have the best possible chance of winning that game, that event, that competition, whatever it is you are involved in. But each individual person is different, and unless you go through those 4 stages previously, then that 5th stage, when it really counts, then you're just not going to get there. And people rush too far. They rush too quickly into stage 5, thinking, okay, I need to eat blah 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 before 4 hours before a game, because carb loading or whatever it is, and they miss out on vital time spent in each stage. And that would be my kind of philosophy around coaching or nutrition, and I've taken that from the strength and conditioning book. I'll put a link to that below in the bottom as well. Get it in there. So again, it's strength and conditioning for young athletes, science and application, Roger Light and John Oliver. So 2 obviously of the biggest researchers and with applied scientists in youth strength and conditioning. So again, fantastic book, really well written, and loads of information in there, so it's really good. Okay, so now we're moving into the training. So take out or moving on from nutrition, moving into the training, which for me it's the area where I'm involved in the most. It's what I have most influence over, because obviously I plan the sessions way in advance, and that comes down to my whole philosophy around a long-term approach. So regardless who I'm working with, I always have a long-term approach. I always have an idea of where I want them to be at the end of a certain stage, but it's never in black and white. It's never, okay, this is where we're going to be. It's more, okay, this is where I'd like us to be, and me and the athlete together are going to go on a journey through certain stages and eventually arrive there. We might not get there in the way that I've set out originally, and we may have to take a few side roads, but long-term view that if I'm getting someone in at 12 years old, I'm not trying to make them 5 kilos heavier with loads of muscle mass in 6 weeks. I'm not trying to get them shredded. I'm not trying to do all these like things that people think they need to do. I'm looking at it from a 2 to 4 year view, where okay, I need to get them efficient in several different exercises. I need to be able to get them to master their own body weight in a squat, a hinge, a lunge, a push. So a horizontal push, like a press up, a horizontal pull like an inverted row, a vertical push, a vertical pull like a chin up, and kind of being able to brace and kind of just be aware of their own body weight and be efficient at moving. Again, it comes back to my philosophy about coaching, about being a better mover makes you a better athlete. Oh shit. And we are back after our snack break. So continuing on the training side of things. So for me, my main focus with anybody that I work with is strength, because the majority of people lack strength in pretty much every movement you could think of. So squat, hinge, bench, pull-ups, push-ups, you name it. People lack strength in that area, and you need to build up strength in those areas before you can start to kind of develop speed, develop power, develop maybe moving into hypertrophy phase. Strength is the foundation for all the other physical qualities that are going to make you essentially better at your sport, because at the end of the day, you strength train to make you better at your sport, not to become super strong, although it'd be nice. But ultimately, the physical training that you do is designed to make you better at your sport. and that's it. Obviously, because I work with kids, and I have a little bit more to think about in terms of where they are in their journey, in terms of training age, but also biological age, because obviously you're going to get kids who are pre-puberty, kids who are in and around peak height velocity, which is a term you use to describe the period in which they're growing at their most, so the growth spurt, and kids that are post-puberty. So depending on what stage a child fits into, that will dictate then the training protocols that you actually use, because someone who's post-puberty can benefit a lot more from maybe doing some hypertrophy based work, whereas someone who's pre-puberty would benefit more from developing movement competency and developing strength and being exposed to a lot more exercises and kind of complex exercises and developing them into a better mover. And those who are in and around peak height velocity are probably going to benefit more from a kind of a maintenance program where you're trying to hold on to as many of those attributes that they've developed in their pre-puberty stage, because a lot of athletes or even kids go through adolescent awkwardness because they're growing at a rate that they're not used to, and their limbs are longer lever lengths between their legs and their arms, and it's a little bit awkward to almost have to relearn certain techniques that you used to be able to do. But now that your legs are longer, a step over might be more difficult for you. Running might be a little bit more of a challenge, and those are the challenges that present themselves quite often to me, and obviously like sports coaches likewise as well. My training programs, or my prescription of programs, follow the same kind of routine. So you start off someone when they come in and you're developing movement competency, so you're teaching them the basics, how to, and then insert any exercise. So how to squat, how to hinge, how to lunge, how to horizontal pull and push, how to vertical pull and push, and how to brace effectively. Have a better awareness of their body position, what different positions should feel like, and then once you can do that, then you can move them into slightly more difficult exercises. So I have steady progressions for each exercise. So a squat, ultimately at the end of it, you're either, we'd say, like front squatting, back squatting, or overhead squatting, and it's how you get someone from not knowing how to squat to being able to effectively and efficiently back squat. And again, it comes back to having a long-term approach to these sorts of things, and I could go through them all. I have again, it was when I was at Wolves, I developed in part alongside the one that we developed for the academy while I was there, the kind of flow chart of progressions for each exercise, and I'll go through it in another video maybe sometime. But those progressions then help inform how I progress each individual athlete depending on where they are in their program, or in their just like that long-term development. If someone can effectively we'd say goblet squat, and they may not get a benefit from continuously trying to do that, maybe I need to make it a little bit more difficult. Maybe I might push them into a single leg squat to a box, little things like that. The sessions are never based around trying to make them tired, trying to just develop fatigue. You're looking to develop competent movers, confident young kids in a gym environment, do a variety of different exercises, and kind of exploring things as well that they may not be exposed to. And that's why I like it a little bit more, because it's a little bit more coaching involved rather than just being a trainer. And then things like developing speed, so teaching running technique, introducing them to A skips and how to apply force effectively to the ground. Each individual again is going to have their own running technique, but if you can guide them in a general direction to find their own optimal running technique based off, we'll say again, principles of being a fast sprinter, then again you have an effective strategy to develop an efficient athlete who's going to be a competent mover and is going to be a confident young person when they grow up. And then the other things then, like developing the what's called the perception action. So every action that you make is based on a perception of the situation. So you perceive a certain situation and then you decide on a certain action to use. But those things happen so fast that, because sports are so unpredictable, like I talked about before, the movement strategies that you use may not look perfect, but they are going to be ones that minimize your risk of injury, but at the same time benefit you and produce the desirable result, which is, again, one, not getting injured, or two, being successful in your chosen sport. So again, developing as many different movement strategies and implementing or integrating them within games in those sessions that are going to bring about those adaptations in, let's say, a pressure environment during competitive games. So again, that's another focus that I'd be looking at during each one of my sessions and each one of my long-term programs. That pretty much covers my whole philosophy around training, coaching, nutrition, and things like that. It gives you a little bit better of an idea of what may be involved in some of our programs. Like I said, we've got one starting on the 5th of June and hopefully run more during the summer. But yeah, if you've got any questions on those, like my brother said, drop them in the comments box and I will try and answer as many as I can. Whether they become longer videos and content down the road, who knows, or maybe I might just answer them privately. But the last thing that I was going to talk about was how that then transfers to my work then with adults in the gym, because obviously now I'm a sports scientist, graduated as one, the head of youth at Devlopment in Fit 100, but I do a lot of work in the evening times, obviously with the members in the gym on their HIIT sessions, and my philosophy doesn't really change that much, although now obviously I can push adults a little bit more and then try and get a little bit more from them, because you're trying to elicit a response and get an adaptation to training. More often than not, it's fat loss, body composition oriented. But my philosophy rolls over into that work with the adults, in the sense that you got to keep it fun, not babyish fun, but again, we all like to have fun a little every now and again, and keeping exercise fun is crucial, because a lot of the members in the gym would do a HIIT session every single day, and the last thing you want is to have the same session every single day, or at least the same routine. And your weights session and your strength training is obviously a little bit more routine and structured, whereas the HIIT sessions can be kind of a little bit more sporadic in nature, but they're still kind of focused towards getting the desired response from that training session. But the last thing I'll leave you on, and it's probably one of the most important points that I'll make here, is that regardless of who you are, what your goals are, where you are currently and where you want to be eventually, with whether it's strength goals, body composition goals, sport goals, whatever you do with your nutrition and training, you must always have an avenue for progression. If you have it set up in a way where there's no progression, then eventually you're going to fall off the wagon eventually. What I mean by that is, don't start out by training 6 days a week, because where do you go from that? Yes, do you progress to 7 and never have a rest day? But then where do you go from that? You can't progress on from that, and any progression on top of that is just going to be unrealistic and kind of almost counterproductive to what you want to do. Likewise with your strength sessions, you always have to have a bigger picture in mind, and always have an avenue for progression. That's where having a coach comes in handy, that knows what they're doing, and being involved in a gym environment that set you up for success regardless of how long that takes, because the duration of how long it takes isn't important for the most part, whereas the journey that you go on itself is extremely important, and you must always have an avenue for progression. So I'm going to leave it there. This is probably one of my longest videos, but I feel like it's out there now, and while it may change over the next couple of years, I don't think it will. They may get additions, it may get iterations where things slightly change, but that's my focus. That's how I like to do things, and hope you enjoyed the video if you're still watching. It's been a long one, but like I said, it's an important one. Hope you guys got to know me a little bit better, and I will see you in the next video. Like Keen said, smash the thumbs up button, subscribe. Peace out. See you in the next video.